Jama Sa'adat. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-aliyyil azim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina Abil Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. La siyama baqiyatullah fil aradin. Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم. اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. As you know, the late Mullah Muhammad Mahdi al-Naraqi, in the third volume of Jami' al-Sa'adat, has a section on secrets of acts of worship, Asrar al-Ibadat. Alhamdulillah, we had tawfiq to study this section on Salat before. Since we are in the month of Rajab, approaching the month of Ramadan, there was a suggestion to study this part, so inshallah we will start from tonight. Al-Maqsad al-Khamis as-Sawm. So the fifth part or section is about fasting. Before he starts talking about the spirituality of fasting, he says that there is no need to talk about significance of fasting in general, because it's so much emphasized on the Quran and Hadith that everyone is aware. Even non-Muslims know that fasting is part of Islam. So he says, اعلم أن الصوم أجره عظيم وثوابه جسيم. Be informed that reward for fasting is great. In some hadith, Allah says, As-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bih. Fasting is for me and I am going to reward. As we have case in the Quran that, for example, من يخرج من بيته مهاجرا إلى الله ورسوله ثم يدرك الموت فقد وقع أجره على الله. When ajr is great, we say only Allah can give it. As-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bih, or some people have said wa ana ujza bih. I have the reward, I will be the reward for fasting. وما يدل على فضله من الآيات والأخبار أكثر من أن يحصى. The references that indicate merits of fasting from the Quran and Hadith are too many to be listed, to be exhausted. وهي معروفة مشهورة. They are very well known. فلا حاجة إلى ذكرها. So there is no need that we mention them here. فلنشر إلى ما يتعلق به من الأمور الباطنة. So here we should refer نشر from إشارة. We should point at those things that belong to fasting from spiritual matters. So we should talk about the spiritual side of it. The first chapter, فصل ما ينبغي للصائم. Here, first, he talks about fasting being a comprehensive ibadah. It starts with not eating, not drinking, and not doing other things which are prohibited and listed in fiqh. But it's not stopping there. It starts there but doesn't stop there. Fasting means you try to refrain from anything which is not godly, which is not pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is with all your organs, with not only with mouth, which is about, for example, eating and drinking or swearing, for example. With every organ, with your eyes, with your ears, with your nose, with your touching skins, even with your heart. So he says, ينبغي للصائم أن يغض بصره عن كل ما يحرم النظر إليه. It is expected that the one who fasts to lower his gaze, is to close his eyes basically. It's not just lowering in the sense that still being able, means not to look at. وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Anything which is prohibited to look at. Or yukra, maybe it's not haram, it's makruh. It's because we don't want to do anything which is not godly, which is not pleasing to Allah. Or yashghalu al-qalb. Maybe you look at something, it's not haram, maybe it's not listed in fiqh as makruh, but it's making you preoccupied. وَيُلْهِيهَ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. And then make you heedless with respect to remembrance of Allah. Sometimes I see, for example, large houses, beautiful cars, and maybe they are making me forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and underestimate my own, house or car, etc. It depends. Some people, they are not affected. Some people may be affected. So at least in the months of Ramadan, we should be careful. وَيَحْفَظَ اللِّسَانَ عَنْ جَمِيعِ آفَاتِهِ الْمُتَقَدِّمَةِ. To protect the tongue from all the defects which are discussed before. All the defects of the tongue. Lying is one, ghaiba is one, tuhma, making mockery, many things. In Mahajjatul Bayda we had a list of 20 defects of the tongue. Here also there are many defects of the tongue. وَيَكُفَّ السَّمْعَ عَنْ كُلِّ مَا يَحْرُمْ أَوْ يُكْرَهُ اسْتِمَاعُهُ. Also to stop and protect his ears from anything which is prohibited or is disliked to be heard. وَيَكُفَّ بَطْنَهُ عَنِ الْحَرَامِ وَالشُّبَهَاتِ. Although when you are fasting you don't eat, but when you break your fast or when you are eating suhoor, stop your stomach from being a place for haram food or shubahat, things which are dubious. Protect his stomach from haram and those things which are dubious. وَيَكُفَّ سَائِرَ جَوَارِحِهِ عَنِ الْمَكَارِهِ. And all organs to be stopped from anything which is disliked. Is this something that we understand by ourselves and makes lots of sense, or it's something which is also mentioned in the hadith? He says this is also mentioned in the hadith, although we understand by ourselves and spiritual masters have said, but we understand also from hadith. قد ورد في اشتراط جميع ذلك في الصوم في ترتب كمال الثواب عليه أخبار كثيرة. These things being conditioned for having perfect reward for fasting is mentioned in many hadith. Then he has a discussion here which is very interesting. Of course, this is also very interesting, but maybe you are familiar with this. But he has here also emphasis on something about time of breaking fast, iftar. He says, in the whole period of fasting, especially for example it's months of Ramadan, the idea is that we resemble Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in being Samad. Allahus Samad. Of course we can never be Samad, but we can try to resemble. One aspect of being Samad means he has no need. He's free from any need. We should try to reduce our need and consumption of food. Or we should try to be more like angels who don't eat and drink. So in the months of Ramadan, the idea of fasting is at least for 1 month we try to be more independent when it comes to food and drink. Be more angelic, more spiritual. But he says, unfortunately, sometimes what happens is that people after iftar, they eat twice what they used to eat before, for example, months of Ramadan in night. So they try to compensate also for lunch that they didn't have. Or sometimes they even eat more, different types of sweets and soups and different things. It seems that even at that time it was common. He says, استمرت العادة في هذه الأعصار. This has become a habit which has continued till this age. So we should be careful not to eat too much in the night. He says, it's a good suggestion. He says, suppose it was not months of Ramadan and you were eating lunch. Okay? How much you were going to eat in the night? Just eat that much. Don't add to this, so that you have saved something. But if you eat more and drink more and try to I don't want to say compensate, but just you understand what I mean, to compensate for what you have not eaten and drinking during the day, what have you achieved? Of course, this is a special advice for people whose health would allow that, because there are people that they need to eat more or drink more in the night, otherwise they cannot fast, or maybe fasting would be very difficult for them, especially if there are long days. This is one point. So we don't want to say everyone who is eating or drinking is doing a mistake, but try between you and Allah, see whether you can reduce and keep it as like a normal night, not too much eating. This is one point I wanted to add. Second point I want to add is also that although for our spirituality we should try to reduce eating and drinking and keep it to the normal, but also months of Ramadan, in my humble view, has social aspect, community aspect. It's part of the education for our children, and I personally think it's good if they feel it is a special month. For example, we go to masjid and eat together. That's, I think, great. One of the best things is that when they see we eat together in the months of Ramadan. And also for children, to make it something special, a special sweets, a special, I don't know, things that we do in the month of Ramadan, so it remains as a great month with lots of good memories. One of the things is that, for example, when they get invited, they realize that in the month of Ramadan, there are more things available, for example. I think this side is also very important. But for you as a wayfarer towards Allah, you try to reduce your eating and drinking. But this doesn't mean that we should not have a special atmosphere in the month of Ramadan where children can find that this is a very special month and everyone is excited. We have more food, I don't know, more sweets, etc. This is my humble opinion. But as yourself, yes. So he says, ينبغي أيضا ألا يستكثر من الحلال وقت الإفطار بحيث يمتلئ. It's expected that he would not eat even halal. We are not talking about haram, we are not talking about shubahat, something halal. But don't eat too much in the time of iftar, breaking fast, to the extent that he would become full of food. إذ ما من وعاء أبغض إلى الله عز وجل من بطن مليء من حلال. We had in Hadith on one Basri, ما ملا آدمي وعاء مثلا أبغض إلى الله من البطن, something like this. There is no container which is disliked by Allah or no container is more disliked by Allah than a stomach which is filled with halal. Forget haram, even halal. كيف والسر في شرع الصوم قهر عدو الله. A very important secret in legislation of fasting. Shar' means here tashri', legislating. Shara'a, shari', it means the one who makes law. One important secret of legislating of fasting is to defeat enemy of Allah, shaitan. How shaitan works? Shaitan uses our shahawat. So by reducing food and other things, shaitan becomes weak. قهر عدو الله وكسر الشهوة والهوى لتتقوى النفس على التقوى. You break shahwa and whims so that your soul becomes stronger and capable for having taqwa. وترتقي من حضيض حظوظ النفس البهيمية إلى ذروة التشبيه بالملائكة الروحانية. And you would rise from lower pleasures of animal soul to the height and peak of being like spiritual angels. Angels are spiritual. وكيف يحصل ذلك? How can this happen? إذا تدارك الصائم عند الإفطار ما فاته ضحوة. If at the time of iftar, the one who is fasting tries to compensate what he didn't eat and drink during the day. Especially if more colorful food is added, as it has he says استمرت العادات في. In these ages this custom has been continuing, that even they have more colorful food in the month of Ramadan. He says perhaps the food which is eaten in the month of Ramadan is not eaten in several months. So if someone does some survey, may find that we Muslims in the months of Ramadan, we consume more food than other months. If this is the case, then it means we are missing the point. Of course, I said, the social aspect of it is maybe to be considered. ولا ريب في أن المعدة إذا خليت من ضحوة النهار إلى العشاء. عشاء means the food. عشاء حتى حاجت شهوتها وغويت رغبتها ثم أطعمت من اللذات وأشبعت من ألوان المطاعم وجمع ما كان يأكل ضحوة إلى ما يأكل ليلا وأكل الجميع في الليل مرة أو مرتين أو أكثر زادت لذتها وتضاعفت قوتها وانبعث من الشهوات ما أسعى كانت راكدة لو تركت على عادته. So maybe if we don't eat and drink during the day, this would make our nafs more excited. And then in the night you give more food and more colorful, more tasty, etc. Actually you are making your nafs enjoy yourself more. Maybe you are actually making your nafs more powerful. Because one way to add to the lazza is when you don't keep, giving lazza to the nafs. So this was not supposed to be the case, that you are enjoying, physical lahza of eating and drinking, more, and you're making, entertainment for your nafs. Maybe nafs didn't have this much excitement in other days of the year. فَلَا يَحْصُلُ مَا هُوَ الْمَقْصُودُ مِنَ الصَّوْمِ. What was maqsood min as-sawm, which is not the purpose, which is not now happening? تضعيف القوى الشهوية التي هي وسائل الشيطان. Weakening the faculties, the powers which are related to our whims, to our appetites, and these are means for shaitan. We have to reduce. How much? أن يأكل في مجموع الليلة أكلته التي كان يأكلها كل ليلة لو لم يصوم من دون الذم مما يأكل في النهار. Just eat what you used to eat before, without adding what you didn't eat during the day to your food in the night. Just keep it as you always used to eat in the night. حتى ينتفع بالصوم, so that you can benefit from your fasting. والحاصل أن روح الصوم وسره والغرض الأصلي منه, the spirit of the fasting, the secret of fasting, the main purpose of fasting. There's no way to explain this better. روح الصوم وسره والغرض الأصلي منه is what? التخلق بخلق من أخلاق الله. To acquire, to resemble Allah in one of His qualities. أعني الصمدية. Allah is Samad. Try to resemble Him. Reduce your need with respect to food, etc. والاقتداء بالملائكة. Try to follow malaika, angels. Malaika have no shahawat. They don't have appetites. You try voluntarily to reduce your shahawat بقدر الإمكان, as much as possible. وهذا إنما يحصل بتقليل الأكل عما يأكله في غير وقت الصوم. And this can only happen if we reduce our eating compared to other times. So if I reduce my eating by not eating during the day and keeping my eating in the night the same, means I have made lots of, saving. I have reduced my food. فلا جدوى لمجرد تأخير أكله وجمع أكلتين عند العشاء. So there is no benefit in not having a meal and then having 2 meals in the night. ثم لو جعل سر الصوم ما يظهر من بعض الظواهر من إدراك الأغنياء ألم الجوع والانتقال منه إلى شدة حال الفقراء فيبعثهم ذلك على مواساتهم بالأموال والأقوات فهو إذن لا يتم بدون التقليل في الأكل. Okay, the main secret of fasting, we said, is to resemble Allah and angels. He says, even if we suppose that one secret of fasting is what we have in some text, which is true, but this is not as fundamental as the one we mentioned already. This is another reason, that rich people or people who can afford, maybe you're not rich, but someone who can afford, would understand the pressure on poor people who cannot afford to buy food, have good drink, healthy water, for example, for themselves, for children. So months of Ramadan should help them to understand the condition of poor people, so that they can then do muwasat, they can share their money, their food with them. But this also would not happen if in the night we eat too much, so that even during the day we don't feel hungry or thirsty, for example. For this also we need to feel the pain of thirst and hunger. So this is the first chapter. Inshallah we continue, Bismillah, next week. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.